Hi, and welcome back to Value Bites. Today, we are so excited to have Ken join us. Ken's going to share some information about how he helps business owners prepare to exit their business. We're going to learn a lot from Ken today. We've had several conversations with him here recently, and every time we're just so energized and excited. He's a great guest. So Ken, before we dive into the interview, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you help businesses and business owners.
Sure. I started Clutch Advisors to help business owners build valuable businesses that run without them. So I did this after years of seeing disappointing exits in the M&A brokering. 70% of businesses that are listed for sale, they don't actually sell. And a lot of people are surprised by that statistic. But when you think about it, people that go into business, they don't really have an end game, so they're not that prepared. And we've all heard the statistics about new businesses, almost half of new businesses will fail within about 5 years. So business is hard and business owners lack support. Our goal is to meet business owners as early as possible now so that, they're a little bit more prepared down the road.
That's
That
awesome. And
is
you gave such like the perfect battle cry. Love it.
perfection. And I feel like it's just so important to acknowledge that you're helping them not only exit their business, but figure out how the business can run without them on the front end. And I think that just resonates a lot because in our process of working with owners, we really find that selling is not on their mind. They're really focused on the day to day. And so there's this idea of like, hey, okay, well, maybe selling's not up on your mind, but wouldn't it be great if you were able to have a business that can run without you in the day-to-day grind? So maybe you can have that freedom, take a vacation. But what would you say to an owner to keep them listening right now as we talk about preparing to sell?
Yeah, I agree. A lot of business owners that I contact are not ready to sell. They're not thinking about it. They don't want to talk about it. But it's imperative that they start to think about their end game for a lot of reasons. The first one is businesses are bought, not sold. So that's kind of an expression in our industry. And what that means is that sometimes the business owner has a grand plan about, when they're going to sell down the road. And unfortunately, the universe has a different plan. A lot of times when the business is going well, the last thing the owner's thinking about is exiting, but that's when the buyer magically appears. And the owner's not prepared. They don't even know what the value of their business is. But it's good to be prepared because conversely, sometimes when owners are ready to sell, the buyers are nowhere to be found. And so why is that? It's because a lot of times they're selling towards the end. Their energy has gone down. The business numbers might have gone down. It's a less valuable business. So businesses are bought, not sold. Like that basically means sometimes things happen not on the seller's time frame, but maybe on the buyer's time frame. The second thing is, if you're not ready to exit, once you have an end game, you will run your business differently. You'll avoid 90% of the mistakes, the trial and error, the roller coaster existence that most business owners live. Instead, you'll just manage the business much better. And then obviously, when it does come time to sell, owners that take a crash course in M&A, it never ends well. A lot of times they've never sold the business, but the buyers can be sophisticated or they bring in teams of CPAs and attorneys, and this really puts the owner at a disadvantage. The last thing I would say is, once the owner starts thinking about an exit, let's say they get bored, they want to do something else, or they're just approaching that retirement age. Once they start thinking about selling, it's too late. It's almost too late because there's 3 periods that they need to consider before selling. So I'll just go over those 3 periods. One is the proof period, which means a buyer needs at least 3 years of data and showing an uptrend in order for you to get the most value. So you have to be prepared to have 3 good solid years where the records are really clean. The second is the listing and offer period. You know, it could take a year to sell a business. So now we've got 4 years on this timeline. And the last thing is the transition period. Sometimes the buyer may want the owner to stick around for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. So let's call that a year. And now we have 5 years. And so you really don't want to, ideally call a broker and say, I want to sell within a year. You want to kind of get the ball rolling way early in the process about how to build value, what's your vision look like, what's your end game.
Kind of going back to what you said about, first of all, everyone's going to exit at some point. Like that's not an option. You can't live forever. And the idea that, if you're not prepared early, or if there is an emergency kind of situation that comes up that forces you out of your business, is there a story, or when you think about how important this is there a particular instance that comes to mind that you could share? Because I think sometimes owners, it's easy to feel like, well, these statistics don't apply to me, but real life stories kind of hit a little closer to home.
Yeah, so I've seen it. I've got way more than a few stories. I'd love to just touch on 2 that are fresh in my mind, but one of them, the owner's spouse came down with a terminal illness, and luckily we were able to sell the business quickly. Obviously, he was highly motivated, and he was happy to get out so he could take care of his wife. But had we met years ago, we would have positioned his business to run without him, and he could have sold it for quite a bit more. Another one, I have a gentleman he's struggling to sell his business right now because he has health problems. So he puts in 20 hours per week. It's a physical, pretty demanding job. Every month that goes by, he's able to put in less hours. So unfortunately, even though there's a high degree of interest in his business, his ability to work in the business keeps dropping and his numbers keep dropping. And so he's chasing a number, and he really needs a certain number to exit. Otherwise, he has to keep working. And so he's kind of trapped. So I've got many other stories, but again, that's why I've seen too many bad exits. And that's why I'd love to meet owners much earlier in the process.
It's absolutely never too early to start planning. I think that's the sentiment that, we know and we hear because we're in that space. But I think oftentimes owners, they're not thinking about that. And, we're a little different than other marketing agencies. We really work to focus on the long-term vision for owners, for their business, for their work-life balance, right? As part of our framework, the vision value model. And so my thought is, what does that look like in your realm, Ken? How do you help an owner identify and connect with their vision so they can get out of just that surviving day-to-day mentality?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love your vision value model, and that's why I'm grateful we met. We all have a limited time on this earth, so it's critical to kind of step back regularly and look at the big picture, and to do that as part of a routine. So I like to ask new owners, so tell me, what's your end game? Nobody's thinking about their end game, especially when they, open their doors to a new business. The only thing that they think about, the only time they think about it is when maybe something goes wrong or forces them to think about it, something that they probably didn't envision or want in their life. So, that gets your question about having a vision. And I also heard you say day to day, which is really spot on. The more business owners get sucked into their business, the less time they have to be creative and strategic and to think about their vision. But that's really why they went into business in the first place. They have a they have a goal, they want freedom. So this is all very normal, but it happens all the time. But it doesn't have to be that way. Like we believe owners should be able to have a business of high value that they love. So committing to a vision takes some work. We have some simple tools to help create a vision that sticks. One of them is called the Vision Builder. So just like you guys, we do focus on that. We've learned that people who have a vision for the future tend to be better decision makers and planners. They tend to be more resilient and open to change. They tend to think positively and have higher motivation. They value creativity, and they have certain ambitions and goals that they want to achieve with their business.
So I think I know the answer to this question already, but I'm going to ask it and then I'm going to ask you to elaborate. So how common is it for owners to kind of see their business as a paycheck, right? It's getting them through life day to day. It's maybe funding a nice life, but they're not really seeing it as that transferable asset, that thing that's going to support their personal long-term vision. And second part of that, what are some ways that you help owners kind of change that mentality, right? Some ways that you can help them shift that thinking from that day to day, I'm getting through, I'm living the life I want now, to that long-term vision. Where are you going? What's your fourth quarter look like? And how can the transfer of your business support that long-term vision?
Yeah. When you say thinking about a paycheck, that doesn't sound like freedom. We're all business owners. We've all been there, and it's not the reason we went into business to think about a paycheck. We wanted a little more freedom. We wanted a little more room to maneuver. So in order to build a valuable asset, we focus on getting time back for the owner. Whether their vision is to have a lifestyle business or a high growth business, I think the common denominator is most owners want freedom, and they want more freedom. They can't get enough of it. Even if they love to work, they want freedom to work on their terms. So we kind of look at, let's break it down into small chunks. So let's work on getting the first 10 hours a week back. And that's a huge bonus for the owner, as long as they're disciplined in protecting it once they get it back. But once they get that time back, the business is less dependent on them day to day. So not only are they enjoying the business more, but the business is actually worth more. Businesses that are too owner dependent, will have an issue, and buyers have concerns about that. So that's the first 10 hours. Then the next step is to convert another 10 hours from day to day to more strategic activities. Now we're trading more clutter for more clarity. And before you know it, the business becomes a lot more fun, more valuable. It's a snowball effect. Owners really should seek freedom while they're owning their business and running their business, not just at the end. We want to take that snowball of distractions and put it in reverse.
That's such good advice. And, I guess as we encroach on our kind of final thoughts, I'm going to ask you one more time, what would be the best advice that you feel like someone could do, like right now, to start? If they were wanting to start to plan to exit, or even just wanting to work to make their asset, their business, as valuable as possible, what would be the advice you would give Ken for starting now, do this?
Great. I'm going to answer that with the first thing not to do.
I like it. Okay.
Because it kind of shifts our thinking a little bit. But, there's a saying that goes around that sales cures all problems. And that's a myth. It's too simplistic, because too many sales initiatives can put a business at risk. I think business owners know this intuitively, but they have a bias towards action, and they don't have all the data, and they typically are running without much support. So whether it's sales or single metrics like profit or margins, if they don't have the big picture, that can kind of take them off track. So the things that they should do is, in light of the big picture, they need to know the 8 key value drivers of company value. The second, and I'm a little biased here, is find an advisor. It doesn't have to be me. Call Heather and Randy, call your CPA, whoever is your trusted advisor, because owners tend to run solo for too much of the time, too long. But if you find a good advisor that's a good fit for what you need and has a good return, then they're an investment in yourself, not an expense. And third, I would say embrace the end game conversation. If you don't define your end game, someone else will define it for you, or something else will define it for you. And when you have an end game, again, you'll run your business differently. You'll create a more valuable business. And this is kind of where your vision will save you.
I think those are great takeaways. Ken, people that are listening right now, if they want to know more, if they're ready to dive in, they're seeing the light, they know that the problem is there, even though they might not be thinking about selling for a very long time. Where can they connect with you to learn more about how you can help them with their business?
Yeah, great. Well, thanks. You guys, I'm so impressed by your thinking, because you guys hit on all the critical points that should matter to business owners. So thank you for having me on, and I look forward to more collaboration. Business owners can find me at clutchadvisors.com. That's clutch with a K, like my first name, Ken, advisors with an O.com. And from there, they can text me, email me, connect on LinkedIn. There's some great resources there too. And I would say, don't wait, get the conversation going. And then we're off to the races.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Ken. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Ken.